And Sheriff McCoy will be first, and Mr. Coffey will be second.
All right. Next will be the Sheriff of Jefferson County, Jeff Coffey, and GW Bud McCoy. And the first one that was drawn was
Sheriff McCoy.
Sheriff McCoy.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Post for hosting the debate and WJFC for co-hosting it. And I'm GW Bud McCoy. I am your sheriff. I'm a lifelong resident of Jefferson County. Born here in Dandridge to Garland and Lois McCoy, which I am proud to say they are in the audience tonight. Thank you, Mom and Dad. My wife Joan and I live here in Dandridge. We're members of the First Baptist Church. I began my law enforcement career in 1975 here in the city of Dandridge as a part-time officer. In 1980, I became a part-time officer with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. 2 years later, I became a full-time officer in 1982 with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. I came up through the ranks as a supervisor, a sergeant, a captain, a lieutenant, a chief of detectives, and became a chief deputy for 10 years under my previous sheriff. I became sheriff in 2010, and I've been your sheriff for the last 8 years. I want to continue to be your sheriff for another 4 years. In my law enforcement career, I've attended the leadership training, which leads leaders to become leaders. I've also attended the FBI National Academy and graduated from the FBI Academy. I have attended the leadership class here in Jefferson County, which teaches you a lot about Jefferson County, things that you wouldn't know if you didn't go through the leadership class, about all aspects of the county. I want to continue to improve this and do a great job, as I feel like I have for the last 8 years, and ask for your vote and support for the sheriff of Jefferson County for another 4 years. Thank you.
You want to address the issue of what you would do to improve the sheriff's department?
Yes, I would. 2 areas. Pay for the deputies, include the deputies in the jail and also the deputies on the road. That's the improvement for pay. Now, second improvement would be in the next term, we're going to address the overcrowding at the jail, and we're going to look at having to add on to the jail and make space for the inmates.
I believe you covered your qualifications, Mr. Coffey.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the Post and the WJFC for giving those that didn't have the opportunity to come here to actually hear it on the radio. I think it's great. Like I said, my name's Jeff Coffey. I'm a candidate for sheriff. Grew up in Granger County on a dairy farm. As a dairy farmer, I mean, you had two things. You milked cows and you went to church, because that's the only two things you got to do growing up. But I learned a lot about hard work and a lot about faith growing up. About 25 years ago, a little bit beyond that, about 30 years ago, I started working over here for the EMS. Met my wife at the hospital. She was a respiratory therapist. Well, she hooked me in and rescued me and dragged me back over here. We were married. We live in Piedmont. I've got 32 years of public safety. I started out over here as an EMT, went on to paramedic, became a police officer here in Jefferson City, worked there, went on to the Highway Patrol, been there for the last 13 years. I've been in many leadership classes. I went through the Tennessee Highway Patrol's leadership school. I serve as chairman of the board of directors at the rescue squad. I've had many opportunities here in the county to meet a lot of great folks, over the last 7 months. and through my service here, I'll go ahead and start into what my plans are for the sheriff's office. And one of the things, some of the things my personal convictions are and what I see. We've got, like every other county, we got a drug problem here. When you start looking at the statistics, when the TBI says that 80% of all crimes are related to drugs, I mean, it's a problem. When you look out articles in the newspaper that says Jefferson County ranks high with births that are being addicted, and also the people that are abusing drugs. When we have 2 people a month in this county on average die from overdose from drugs, we've got a problem. I've said this before, my testimony for that is personal, for what our family went through. As a sheriff, that is going to be a top priority, as going after those and seeking those who are dealing this poison to our county and to our citizens, and also helping those who are exposed to it and are addicted to it now, is to try to lead them through our judicial system and the drug court to lead them to a path of recovery.
All right. Do you want to address what you would do? I mean, I think you have, as far as what you would do as a sheriff if you're elected. And I think something that Sheriff McCoy covered, and I think it leads in the question I have here. What would you have, what would you do, or plans you'd have to increase officer pay over the next 4 years? I believe the sheriff has addressed that, and I'd just like you to address that also.
Okay. I talked about this a few weeks ago as far as the pay for our deputies. I think we have to look at a pay scale. We have to give our deputies an incentive to stay here. When we get good quality people in here and we invest time and money into training those people, I think we have to establish a pay scale for those. So if they stay here to a certain time, that each year they would get a raise until a time where they would top out. And then after that, it would just be whether the county government gave them a raise. As far as all county employees, they would get that raise, but it would be on a step system. And I think that has to be established. And then also go into, you would look at the surrounding counties. And you would do a survey to see what the surrounding counties, and also counties that's your size, the population, to see what they're paying their deputies as well. So we can kind of do that survey so we can kind of keep up with it. You know, if one county gives their department a big raise that year, we may not be able to match that through the county court, but if we can just kind of keep right there on the edge of the hills when it comes to the time when we do start making some additions to it, it ain't a big lump sum, that we can kind of stay on the heels of it and we can be competitive as far as our market with our deputies.
If you would.
Pay is a big thing. When I came into office, I revamped the sheriff's office and put supervisor over each shift. And I used some top pay to equalize pay, and we do have those steps right now. We have a starting pay, a 5-year step, and a 10-year step. All of those steps need to be more. And our surrounding counties around the pay that we see from them, I don't lose too many people for pay-wise to other counties. What I lose them to is the cities. I've lost one gentleman doubled his pay, went up to $42,000. I've lost 4 officers that went to Gatlinburg. They started out $38,000. That's our top pay for topping out after 10 years. So we need increased pay through county commission to address that, just so we can keep our officers here after they're trained.
All right. Mr. Coffey, if you would address this issue. How can the county and city law enforcement work together to make a safer community for citizens?
One of the things that I would suggest from the get-go is to put personalities aside and create a drug unit. I mean, this county is a part of the drug task force. We're a part of it now. The sheriff stood up here 4 years ago and said he was a part of it. We're still a part of it. What drug task force are is they work in the 4th Judicial District, Jefferson, Cock, Granger County, and Jefferson County. Not 100% of their time is spent here. It's a judicial district. So my first initiative would be to sit down with all these police chiefs and say, for once, for the first time in this county's history, I want to sit down and create a narcotics unit. Narcotics/street crimes unit. A unit that would have the intelligence, the skill to go out here in our county. We wouldn't have to worry about them having to work in Sevier County or Cock County or Granger County. They're going to work right here. And for the many people that's called me and said, hey, that I've talked to, that said, hey, you know, the people down here, you know, they're dealing drugs. We see a lot of traffic in and out of there. We can address those problems. We can sit down as chiefs and sheriffs and say, hey, let's find somebody to be over this unit. Somebody that will direct these people. And when we got these problems, they can be handled and directed at that time. But we have to work together and establish these relationships, because Bainbury is going to have different issues and problems than Newmarket is. And Jefferson City, vice versa with Dandridge and White Pine. The sheriff's got to be able to lead and sit back and work with them, and whatever they need and whatever we need to help them with, we need to sit down and try to help those each individual departments.
Sheriff?
Yes, we work drugs, and we do have a local drug task force. And these drug task force does cover the 4 counties that they're assigned to. But right now the members of the task force are just Jefferson and Granger. But the drug units that we have are drugs right here in this county. Just because this one's selling or that one's selling, we have 55 officers that address those drug problems. They watch these communities, they patrol your communities, and they make drug arrests. We turn over to our narcotics officers that's undercover information from all these stops. And not only do we work a local drug task force, we're assigned to a federal task force. We have arrested 84 this past year in federal court. One of those I arrested 4 years ago and had her in court for selling right here in Jefferson County. She continued, she spent her time, got out, continued, and our federal task force just arrested 23 co-defendants in her case that are prosecuted in federal court. So we do work drugs, and we'll continue to work drugs and make this county a safe place to live.
All right, Sheriff, I have this question, and if you say fire the lawyers, I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. Since my son is presently down in Middle Tennessee defending Wilson County in a lawsuit, how do you lower the amount of funding that goes towards paying lawsuits against the department?
How do we lower the cost of lawsuits? Well, we uphold the Constitution of the United States. Every one of you all have a right to file a suit against each other. Now, we continue to do right. And to lower the cost of these lawsuits, we have. The last 4 lawsuits that were filed, we won. And the defendants' lawyers had to pay the cost. So that's what you continue to do. You do what's right. And when the lawsuits are filed, you win. Thank you.
Mr. Coffey?
Now, the question was to deter.
How do we lower the amount of funding that goes towards paying lawsuits against the department? You want to look at the question here? And like I say, I'll hold you in contempt of court if you say fire the lawyers.
I'll try to answer it like an attorney. That'd be okay? I think you don't put yourself in a position to have lawsuits. You got to have the training and leadership for your department to lower those. You look at, all the lawsuits in law enforcement. I mean, it happens all the time with law enforcement, and that's what the sheriff had said. I mean, it is a problem. But a lot of it, the lawsuits that come are due to training, and it was due to lack of training. So as a sheriff, I would make it a goal to make sure our people are trained to a point to minimize the amount of lawsuits.
Okay. Have a new question for you, Mr. Coffey. Let me ask you this specifically: what should the drug fund be used for?
Well, like every other department, it's used in the stopping of drugs. This county, the sheriff mentioned, they had 55 people out working drugs. Well, we had 103 people arrested in 2016. 55 people arrested, 103 people. In Bainbury the other night, he said in 2017 they'd arrested 158. So I think we need to use some drug money to do some funding for some officers so we can arrest some more people. So if you look at the averages of 55 plus 103, you're getting into the 0.02 percentages.
Well, you have to look at the law and go by the law on how the drug fund can be spent. You have to use a percentage of that drug fund for education. And we do that by their DARE programs in all the middle schools. That is what you have to spend part of your drug fund for education, for kids. A part of the drug fund is for confidential funds to be spent to buy drugs for undercover agents, and we do that. And just recently, we've spent the drug fund money to purchase 2 new narcotic dogs. So you have to go by the law and spend the money in the drug fund the way the law requires you to. Thank you.
We'll do another. All right. Sheriff, I believe you'd probably be up on this one. Sheriff's Department has a boat and motorcycles and a fleet of vehicles. Do you believe these are necessary to the operation of the department, and how should they be funded?
Yes, we have 2 motorcycles and we have 2 boats. The motorcycles cost $9,000 apiece. So we utilized and bought these 2014 motorcycle Harley Davidsons to be used for special occasions, traffic, and that's what they're used for. And they do make a good use for the department. I put it off for years, was convinced, and when we got a good buy on these motorcycles, I can sell those motorcycles for more than $9,000 today if the public wants me to, and get our money back. The boat, we got a Sea Ray boat that was given to us through Blount County Sheriff's Department back when Dunn was sheriff. It was they didn't tell us the motor was blowed up when we bought it, did they? Or when they gave it to us. So we actually replaced the motor, and it's been a good use for patrolling Douglas and Cherokee Lake. It's a large boat, hard to take in and out, so we stationed it in the Douglas Lake. We bought a new Mako boat, and the first month, before we could even get it strapped, it spent all day long, all week long, on 5 drownings in Jefferson County. Made me wonder, I don't want to ever buy a new boat again. But it has been the most useful tool on Douglas and Cherokee Lake that we have purchased.
Coffee.
Motorcycles, we have them in the Highway Patrol where I currently work as a trooper. They're a great asset for traffic enforcement. But I just have questions for the sheriff. Where did the money come from to purchase these motorcycles and these boats? And do we have certified motor officers now that operate these?
We do have experienced officers that ride the motorcycles. They do have motorcycle.
Certified Tennessee Post Commission?
They're not certified through the Tennessee Highway Patrol, no. They're certified by driver's license to ride the motorcycles. They're trained motorcycle, experienced motorcycles. I have been too. And yes, I ride one of the motorcycles. We do special control with these motorcycles. And the boat, to answer your question, the boat was paid for out of the drug fund. That we can legally do because the law allowed it to.
Gentlemen, there is one other question that here I think is very, very important in light of the opiate epidemic, not only here in Jefferson County, but statewide and nationwide. And Mr. Coffey, I'm going to ask you, since, I'm not picking on you, but it's just, it's your time, and how would you attack or fight the opiate epidemic here in Jefferson County?
You mean as far as enforcement?
I'm sorry?
You're saying attack, you're saying enforcement of it?
Whatever, try to prevent it and lessen the opiate epidemic and the deaths that come about from it, Mr. Coffey.
Okay. What
would be your solution?
As I said earlier in my opening statement, that's something we personally went through with my family, and the opiate was the drug of choice. And it's difficult. It takes many man hours to go after these because this drug is so addictive to these people, they're not willing to give up information about it. As we went through it for 7 years, I couldn't get my stepson to tell me, where are you getting this junk at? And working the street and conducting traffic stops and working with these people, they're not willing to give this stuff up. They're very hard cases to work. That's why you got to have the manpower to do it. You got to have the people in place and a narcotics unit to come in and work on these cases. Every county around here, as far as, and what we was talking about earlier about full-time narcotics people that are designated. When the sheriff's talking about 55, those are patrol deputies. They're answering calls for service and all this. I'm talking about people that come out and all they do that day is work drugs because it's so time-consuming. That's what we have to have in place. Somebody that comes in and their concentration is they're getting information that this is a drug house here. They start concentrating their efforts on that. And a lot of that is surveillance. A lot of that is undercover. A lot of that is working with the patrol deputies to make a traffic stop so they can start interviewing these people and start getting some cooperation so they can get back into that house and start making a case and arrest them. One of the other things we need to do as far as a sheriff's office is I'm a part of the Rescue 180 We have Narcan that we put out to all the counties. We need to make sure that actually gets inside our patrol units. From what I understand, as of today, the sheriff's deputies still do not have that life-saving drug inside their car.
Thank you for asking that question. I'm on the board of directors for the Tennessee Sheriff's Association. In the last few years, we have been fighting in legislation the opiate problem. I am a member of the Drug Recovery Court, and we fight it every day. And we are making progress. We've made so much progress now that the opium problem is going down a little bit right now, and we're addressing that problem. And now there's meth coming back, so we're having to purchase more meth today than we do. But in our jails, we have programs. Helen Ross McNabb came into our jails 2 years ago by a great state of Tennessee, gave us the best grant we ever got in the jail to find these people places to go, to give them help while they're in the jails. And through our drug court, through Helen Ross McNabb, through a lot of church organizations, we are fighting the problem in the jail before the guys go back out so they can be off the drugs, and we continue to give them education, and we are making progress. Help me continue to make this progress. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I might say this, thank you all candidates. You've been very informative, and we appreciate it very much, and I'm turning it back over to our editor.
Absolutely. Folks, I want to tell you again, thank you for coming. I would like to say to each and every one of the candidates, those that are either incumbent or running, thank you for all your service, okay, everything that you do for this county. And for those of you that are running for the office, thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you all. Appreciate you coming. Everybody have a safe trip.